The town of Holyoke, Massachusetts, who is being taken care of by Northeastern Utilities, is exempt in particular areas due to the fact that their drinking water source is next to the town of Holyoke. So I just wanted to bring that to the table in hopes that you would take in consideration the fact that our drinking water source obviously is right below us, and considering that parts of Holyoke are exempt from herbicidal application due to their drinking water being next to them. I was hoping that we could make that the same for Cape Cod.
Is there anything else? I mean, you have other...
On that subject? Or I have much more? Yes, I was on. Yep. Thank you, toNStar, for allowing the time to map wells. I realize there's a buffer zone allowed between where you can spray and where wells are. That's a horizontal distance. Is there protection for a vertical distance? Let's see, scientific testing. How long do herbicides remain active? That's a question that involves a conflict between old science and new science that I've found in the research I've been doing. Updated research states the breakdown of herbicides is much slower than once thought. This means they are active longer and travel farther. Regarding the current state of science, there's the President's Cancer Panel. If maybe we could pass around this book, feel free to flip through it. States there's not enough research being done. It also states exposure to even small amounts of herbicides is harmful to humans. And you can find more information in this annual report. If anybody wants it by email, I can get that to you, no problem. Studies prove that glyphosate is extremely persistent in soils. Its half-life is over 100 years. It affects reproduction, reduces sperm counts, causes genetic damage and abnormal development in children. Children are more vulnerable to toxins. Toxins disrupt normal organ growth, causing long-term irreversible damage. Scientists even say trace amounts do much harm. Imazapar moves readily in soil and contains surface and which contaminates surface and groundwater. Trichlor is highly toxic to fish and doesn't break down as quickly as stated in earlier testing. All this is, you can refer to the Journal of Pesticide Reform, October 2000 to December 2004 for more details. Another question that remains unanswered regarding this issue is the effect of combining these herbicides. There's no research available that talks about combining chemicals or mixing with surfactants. We all know the label is the law. There are many labels on herbicides that state, or are there labels out there that state that the mixture of chemicals with one another is okay. With all of these unanswered questions, it appears to be time for policy changes. Sarah Peake once said, "We've made mistakes in the past with allowing Agent Orange. Will we be making the same mistake again on this issue?" There are many factors that indicate we don't know the answer to the question. Are manufacturers misleading us? Can they conduct adequate testing of their own products? Independent scientific studies have found in combination these chemicals, it changes its potency. It appears we don't know the accumulated effect of these herbicides together or on our sandy soil. So the precautionary principle should come into effect. The definition is, when an activity raises threats of harm to human health or environment, precautionary measures should be taken, even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. This also involves an examination of the full range of alternatives, including no action. The town of Hudson, Canada, was the first to apply this and is still successful. This fall, Sarasota County in Florida applied it as well. So I have a couple of solutions. Jennifer's going to pass around one possibility. So to date, We're talking about mowing and spraying herbicides for vegetation management. I'd like to briefly outline another possibility I'm calling a green carpet plan. It's an in-depth description that's being handed out. The strength of this plan is that once the system is established correctly, the maintenance will be a minimal responsibility for NSTAR for generations to come. I'm going to go ahead and read the steps and you can catch up. The first of the 3 steps is removal of undesired vegetation. Some root systems are large enough that machines will be needed, and I elaborate on that. Step 2 is the addition of new low-growing ground cover vegetation to fill up the sandy areas. And the final step is appointing a scout to walk power lines yearly, identify undesirable saplings, and pull them out. And that would be all you need to do to maintain once it's set up for future generations. Is that, 1 year growth is a foot high. I kind of do a foot each year, 2 feet, 3 feet. The second year you might need a shovel. The third year you might need to go back to tractors again because the root systems are so big. If we don't have the answers today, it seems that we need more time. Right now the power lines, the undesired vegetation is nothing taller than me. NSTAR has mowed in the last few years, and they usually mow like once every 5 to 7 years on an as-needed basis. There are only a few years left. We have years left before it's actually going to be a threat to our electrical wires, and we could take advantage of a year's time by maybe choosing an acre here on the Cape and doing selective spraying within that area. Having recording and results by a third party, by continuing to map wells and other surface water areas in more details, by continuing our education to be sure this won't harm any vertebrates now or in the future. I'd like to conclude by saying we should all try to take actions to minimize the use of herbicides. Since we don't really know the environmental impact proposed herbicides will have on our health in the future, we need to use the precautionary principle before we risk finding ourselves in a position where remediation is needed. That will be a difficult and expensive chore. What we asked for last year, NSTAR granted, thank you very much, a delay in the herbicidal application as called for in your YOP. We now ask NSTAR to consider an exemption similar to the one that was granted in Holyoke, because we live above our drinking water. It's clear that we can live without herbicides. And let me remind you that NSTAR's responsibility is to maintain vegetation along power lines. Our utility company is not mandated by the state to use herbicides to accomplish this task. So why can't NSTAR secure the same protection for Cape Cod to protect our aquifer? And this is a request for NSTAR to volunteer to not apply herbicides. It is not based on scientific proof. It is based on the fact that we don't fully know what the effects may be. When it comes to human health, we must be cautious. I request that Mass State Department of Health be available to answer questions for members at this table. Some say since homeowners are allowed to use these chemicals, that we shouldn't discourage NSTAR from using them. However, it should be obvious to everyone the applications of truckloads of these chemicals is entirely different scale and can't be compared. NSTAR didn't use them before. They don't need to use them now, and with creative planning, we won't need to use them in the future. We might find with corporation a solution that can be easier than we think. We're the stewards of Cape Cod. We're here to protect our drinking water and our unique and delicate environment. I'm available to clarify any thoughts and points after this meeting. My contact information is on the green carpet plan. And thank you for taking my requests and suggestions into consideration.
Thank you, Laura.